Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Glycine Combat Sub 39 reference GL0399. This watch is available from glycinestore.eu for €565. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a watch box which is protected by this black cardboard outer box. We have the Glycine crown emblem, Glycine logo, and since 1914. And that is indeed true, because Glycine have a rich brand heritage. They've been making watches in Switzerland since 1914. So the watch box is protected by a piece of foam and also a piece of tissue paper, so there's no risk of any scuffs and scratches in transit. I'll take the watch box out and show it to you. So this is the watch box itself, and as you can see in glossy black we have the crown, Glycine, and since 1914 again. It's matte black vinyl coated with a hinged lid, and this is good presentation. It's an acceptable quality watch box with a hinged lid. The interior has a contrasting charcoal grey vinyl and it's well upholstered, as you can see, and the watch sits in the base on a padded pillow cushion which is also charcoal grey vinyl coated to a good standard. So good presentation, and this is a good quality watch box which is suitable for a mid-tier piece costing €565. So with regards to the items you get with the piece, this is the warranty card, and I'm pleased to report the Combat Sub 39 is covered by a 2-year international warranty. It's stamped by Tandem Watch Group BV in the Netherlands, which is the authorised dealer for Glycine in Europe. We have the reference number for the Combat Sub 39, GL0399, the date of purchase, and also the serial number. And the serial number on the warranty card is engraved into the case back, so each Combat Sub has a unique serial number. 2 years of international warranty is good, because often at this price point in the mid-tier one only gets a 12-month international warranty. So with a watch you also get this owner's instruction manual, clear concise diagrams. The instructions are in English and it details the operation of the movement used, which is the Glycine caliber GL0224 automatic, which is based upon the Solita SW200-1 automatic that you'll all be familiar with. And with Glycine watches, they also include the quartz owner's instruction manual, because the Combat Sub is produced in quartz and also automatic versions, so they give you both versions of the owner's manuals. You also get this keyring which has the Glycine logo embroidered, and on the reverse it has remove before flight, so it's like a flight tag, because some Glycine pieces have an aviation history. And you also get this Glycine branded microfiber polishing cloth. I always think it's a nice touch to get a branded microfiber polishing cloth irrespective of the price point of the piece. And lastly, one also gets this plastic Glycine tag with the crown emblem and also Glycine logo embossed. And on the reverse we have the barcode and the reference number for the Combat Sub 39. So good presentation with the watch box, well packaged, and also good accessories with the watch. With regards to the specifications, we have a 39mm case diameter, we have a lug-to-lug measurement of 46.6mm, a thickness of 11.3mm, and a lug width of 20mm. The oyster style bracelet tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to 18mm at the flip lock clasp, which has 2 button push triggers, and as you can see, the flip lock clasp is signed to a good standard with the Glycine crown emblem and also Glycine logo. But I'm going to be critical of it because it only has 3 holes drilled in the flanks of the clasp. This is unacceptable at €565. We're looking at a mid-tier piece, not a low-tier piece below €100. This style of pressed stainless steel clasp was acceptable in 2010, but the industry standard now is for heavier gauge 316L grade milled clasps, and also 5 or 6 micro adjustments if they don't have a ratcheting mechanism. So in 2024, Glycine really need to update this clasp to the industry standard. They should lengthen the clasp and drill an additional 2 or 3 holes to give it 5 or 6 holes in the flanks, alternatively introduce a ratcheting mechanism, and I think that this is unacceptable and a clear cost-cutting measure. With regards to the rest of the specification, we have a flat sapphire crystal with clear AR coating on the underside. Now, the benefit of using a flat sapphire crystal rather than double domed or boxed top hat style is it reduces the thickness of this piece. This is an incredibly low profile and thin piece. Bear in mind, it's not 200 meters, this is a 300 meter water resistant piece. and it's only 11.3 millimeters. That's the kind of thickness one would expect with a quartz powered piece, or alternatively a manual wind piece without a rotor, but this is SW200-1 automatic powered, so there needs to be adequate clearance around the rotor with the case back, but it has a very flat case back, as you can see. It's not a bubble back case back despite being an automatic, and the thickness is only 11.3 as a result. And I think they've made the correct decision by using a flat sapphire crystal, because it does reduce the thickness. Had they used a boxed top hat style crystal, or alternatively double dome crystal, that would have added 1 to 2 millimeters of thickness, and this would be 12.5 to 13. But at 11.3 it's very impressive. The bezel is solid 316L grade stainless steel with an aluminium bezel insert, coin edge finished, nice mirror polished chamfer to the top edge of the coin edge bezel, and I like that it's low profile. It reminds me of a Tudor Black Bay 58, and it gives the piece a vintage aesthetic, and it does suit, because it's a low profile piece, to have a low profile coin edge bezel. And I think it suits better than a scalloped bezel. I think that the coin edge finishing does look very good, and I like the mirror polished chamfer, which complements the mirror polished stainless steel ring around the sapphire crystal. Just very aesthetically pleasing. Nice metallic finish to the 15-minute ticks, which is silver, and the Arabic numerals are also metallic and shiny, so it does work very well with the stainless steel bezel, with the silver mirror polished circle around the crystal, and also the silver chamfer around the top edge of the coin edge bezel. So very shiny and reflective, but very aesthetically pleasing. We've got a black sunburst dial, and that's very reflective. I think this would have looked better with a matte black dial, or alternatively glossy black enamel dial. Sunburst dials are good looking, but the problem is on a dive watch with a flat sapphire crystals, they are very shiny and reflective due to the metallic sunburst finish. But the clear AR coating does an outstanding job of reducing the highly reflective nature of the silver mirror polished applied indices and the silver mirror polished handset. The handset is correctly proportioned, and Glycine deserve credit for not copying the Rolex Mercedes style of handset. They've filled in the circle on the hand, so rather than using a Mercedes hand, it's just a circle of C3 Superluminova. The minute hand extends all the way to the minute ticks on the chapter ring, and the hour hand extends all the way to the indices and the silver Arabic numerals. So I like the dial layouts, because around the inside of the applied indices, they've printed on silver 24-hour Arabic numerals, and it does look very good because the high definition, the printing is crisp and highly legible, the font is very sharp. So the Glycine crown emblem, Glycine logo, Combat, Automatic, Sub 30 ATM are all clearly legible with a nice fine font, and at 6 o'clock it says Swiss made. So really good quality printing on the sunburst black dial. The proportion of the indices is good, and the proportion of the handset works very well. So let's test the bezel execution. 120 click unidirectional bezel, as one would expect. It's got a nice tight bezel action. It feels firm, and to put it into perspective, it feels tighter than a Seiko 5KX, which you'll be familiar with. So it has a heavy bezel action, very firm spring-loaded action to the click spring beneath the stainless steel bezel. Nice, loud, audible clicks. It feels even all the way through the 360 degrees of rotation. It doesn't get tighter or looser, and I like the firm resistance all the way through the 360 degrees. So although it's a low-profile coin-edge bezel, one can get good purchase on it with an index finger and thumb, because the teeth feel sharp. So you can get a good grip of it. So although it's a firm bezel action, it's easy to rotate due to the grippy nature of the coin edge teeth. No lateral side-to-side play whatsoever, so it feels tight. No back play whatsoever. So it's an example to other mid-tier brands of how to get bezel execution correct, because there's no lateral side-to-side play or no back play. Let's just check the alignment. I like the loud audible clicks. It feels like a nice heavy ratcheting mechanism. Each click feels solid. One more click. So the circled dots of C3 Superluminova inlaid in the aluminium bezel insert perfectly aligns with the 12 o'clock index triangle and the 60-minute tick on the chapter ring. So perfect bezel execution. This is 10 out of 10. It's tight, firm resistance, but even all the way through the 360 degrees. No lateral side-to-side play, no back play, perfect alignment. Let's look at the crown. Solid 316L grade stainless steel, coin edge finish, and the coin edge finishing with the chamfer matches the coin edge finishing and chamfer to the bezel, so good continuity of design. So we've got the Glycine crown emblem engraved to a good standard, no sharp edges to it. The chamfer, the chamfer to the front edge of it is very good, so there's no sharp teeth to the tips of the crown. Let's test unscrewing it. It feels smooth, but it's not silky smooth. One can feel the friction. Now, the friction is partly due to the thread action, but it's also partly due to it having 3 rubber O-ring gaskets, because this is not a 200 metre hermetic seal. We're looking at 300 metres. With screw-down crowns that have 200 metres of hermetic seal, they usually have 2 rubber O-ring gaskets, 1 rubber O-ring inside the crown itself and 1 rubber O-ring gasket inside the crown tube. So the 2 hermetic seals provide 200 metres of water resistance. With 300 metres, often it's the case that 3 hermetic seals are needed, so 3 rubber O-ring gaskets, 2 inside the crown and 1 inside the crown tube. So this does have that additional friction. You can feel the rubber O-ring gaskets, and also you can feel slight friction of the interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. You can feel the threads rubbing against each other. So there is room for refinement, there's room for improvement in the tolerances of the machining of the threads and also the quality control, but it is acceptable. So this is powered by the Glycine caliber GL0299, which is based upon the Sellita SW200-1 automatic. So when fully unscrewed, the crown, we're now in the manual wind position. So let's test manually winding it. Nice firm resistance. One can feel the tension in the mainspring gradually building up to its maximum 38-hour power reserve. It does feel smooth. There's no discernible difference between the SW200-1 and the ETA 2824-2 respectively, which it is a clone of. The only difference between the architecture of the two movements is the SW200-1 has an additional joule added. It has 26 joules versus the 25 joules of the ETA 2824-2, which it is a clone of. But in terms of manual wind resistance, the mainspring feels exactly the same. You can't tell the difference between the two, whether it's an SW200-1 or an ETA 2824-2. Both equal. So it feels smooth, nice firm resistance to the gearing. Pulling it out to the first click position is the quick set date complication. So if you look at the date complication at 6, when I rotate the crown clockwise, you can see the date complication clicks over with a nice positive click. It feels lighter in terms of the quick set complication than a Seiko NH35A, which has a very heavy clicking mechanism, which I actually like. With the SW200-1 and also the ETA 2824-2, they have a lighter, smoother click over to the days clicking over, but it does take some getting used to. It's more delicate and smooth, but it is satisfying. The alignment is correct, and I like the positive clicking sound it makes, and it feels smooth on the crown. You can feel the click of each day, so it works very well, and the alignment of the Arabic numerals inside the date window is correct. Second click position hacks the movement. If you look at the second hand, you can see I have now hacked the movement, so it's possible to stop the second hand dead and set the time precisely to the second. So we're now in the time setting position with the movement hacked. Firm resistance to the gearing in the SW200-1, and I like it. Minimal back play clockwise and anti-clockwise. There's an immediate response. When you rotate the crown clockwise or anti-clockwise, the minute to now hand begins to rotate instantly. So I like the lack of back play. It feels like a nice tight movement. Smooth resistance to the gearing, and it feels very good. So good, solid, reliable workhorse Swiss caliber. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that restarts the movement. You'll see the second hand begins to sweep around the dial once again at the characteristic 4 Hz smooth sweep. I like the 4 Hz sweep of the second hand versus 3 Hz, for example, with the Seiko NH35A. And 4 Hz gives a nice smooth sweep. The second hand doesn't judder or stutter around the dial. So let's test screwing the crown back down. Instant thread pickup, so there's a perfect interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. The threads are well machined, the tolerances are good, the quality control is good, but it just doesn't feel silky smooth. There is friction of the threading, and as I've detailed, the friction of the rubber O-ring gaskets. You can feel the rubber O-rings compressing as you screw the crown back down. It's a characteristic of the SW200-1 that the winding stem is very spring-loaded, so you really have to push in the crown into the movement to get the threads to pick up. And it does take some getting used to, but it does work well. It screws down and unscrews to a satisfactory standard, although it's not silky smooth. There is some friction and therefore some room for improvement. So let's discuss the clasp. Now, as I've detailed, light gauge, only 3 holes. Let's look at the internals. This really needs to be updated. But on a positive note, The internals are solid milled 316L grade stainless steel. The 3 hinge pins are tight, the tolerances are good, the quality control is good. No sharp edges to the flanks, doesn't have sharp corners, and the longitudinal brush satin finishing has a beautiful lustre. So the quality of the finishing and the tolerances of the hinge pins are tight. They just need to update the exterior of it, or alternatively introduce a ratcheting mechanism and a better quality body to the clasp, but the actual internals of the solid milled stainless steel portion are good. I'll show you the case back. Solid 316L grade stainless steel, and they've embossed a mirror polished stingray. I think they should delete this stingray because it's irrelevant to the combat sub. I appreciate it's a dive piece, but it would look better if they engraved or embossed the Glycine crown and the Glycine logo, because that would relate to the brand. Really, this stingray doesn't have any bearing on the brand, or doesn't have any bearing on this being a combat sub dive watch. They should have the brand logo and emblem on the back. But having said that, the quality of the embossing is good, the quality of the engraving is good, and the circumference is CNC lathe tool machined. The milled slots don't have any sharp edges or burrs, so the quality of the finishing is good. I like that it's a flat case back rather than a bubble back case back. And bear in mind, this isn't a manual wind or quartz powered piece, it's automatic, so it needs to clear the rotor. And it is flat, and it's only 11.3. It's very impressive that they got the case back down to this thin profile, rather than making it thick and bubble back, and that would make the piece 12.5 or 13mm thick and therefore sit tall on the wrist. The undercuts to the head of the piece on the flanks has a nice curved profile, and there's no sharp edges to the tips of the lugs or the undercut to the case, so the case and the female pivoted end links are well finished. So let's check the end links and the bracelet. So female pivoted end links are the correct choice, but however, the build's quality and quality control is poor. We've got a significant lateral side-to-side play. The centre link in the oyster style bracelet, where it fits around the spring bar inside the female pivoted end link, there's significant lateral side-to-side play, and it rattles. It makes a clicking noise. I'll just check the other one for continuity. So it articulates smoothly because, of course, it's a sloppy fit. There's no friction whatsoever. So it doesn't kink. That's the positive. But the negative is this one also has significant play. So it slides side to side laterally around the spring bar. This is a QC issue, and they need to tighten up the tolerances, the machining of the centre link in the oyster bracelet, where it fits in between the female pivoted end link, to tighten it up because it rattles. So longitudinal and also lateral side-to-side play. And this is not a €100 low-tier piece. We're looking at a mid-tier piece costing €565. It's unacceptable to have that amount of play, lateral and longitudinal. So the bracelet also rattles. Now, this is a clear cost-cutting measure. They've used push pins in the oyster-style links rather than screw pins. The industry standard at this price point is to use 1.6mm screw pins in an oyster-style bracelet. The negative of using push pins, and they're a sloppy fit as you can see, is that every single link has longitudinal, lateral and up and down play in every single direction, and the cumulative effect of all that play is across the length of the bracelet. It rattles. It's got significant play, laterally, longitudinally and up and down, every single direction. So the push pins are a sloppy fit inside the links. I'll just check the other side for continuity. And again, we have the same problem. Now, on a positive note, because it's a loose bracelet, it doesn't kink, so it does articulate smoothly. There's no stiff links. But if they used screw pins, they would tighten up the gaps and we wouldn't have this kind of play, and it's significant play. And over the length of the bracelet, it's very bad. It rattles on wrist and it makes a noise, and of course that's compounded by the sloppy fit of the centre link inside the female pivoted end link. Around the spring bar is a loose fit, so the whole bracelet rattles. So good quality head of the piece, poor quality bracelet, poor quality clasp. Right, so I'll give you a wrist shots and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now, I haven't sized the bracelet, and as you can see, it will easily fit up to a 9-inch wrist because I can easily slide 2 fingers underneath the bracelet and clasp at all times. So even if you are a collector with a very large wrist of over 8 inches, this bracelet will suffice. But clearly, this is a 39mm version. it's meant to suit collectors with a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches rather than 7 to 8. If you are a collector with a larger wrist, I highly recommend the 42mm version of the Combat Sub because that will fit you better. The 42 suits a 7 to 8 inch wrist better, but if you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist, you'll particularly enjoy the compact dimensions of this case because you can see it's only 46.6 lug to lug, and we've got a very curved undercut to the case, and the lugs curve around the wrist. They don't sit flat on the wrist, so there's a minimal gap underneath the tips of the lugs. They've made the correct decision by using female pivoted end links because with a compact 46.6mm lug to lug, it's a short case, wraps around the wrist well, and the end link in the bracelet pulls very snugly to the wrist. Had they used male end links, it would have extended the 46.6 and therefore made it too long on wrist. But you can see, very snug fit, an incredibly low profile due to the flat sapphire crystal and also the flat screw down case back. 11.3 is exceptional for a 300 meter water resistant piece. If it were 200 meters, I would say that is nothing unusual, but at 300 meters it needs a thicker sapphire crystal and a thicker stainless steel case back in order to provide 300 meters of water resistance. So to get 11.3 millimeters with an automatic piece, not a quartz or manual wind piece, is a credit to Glycine. So the head of the piece is excellent in terms of proportions, but they've made a mistake. If you look at the bracelet, it tapers from 20 down to 18, only 2mm of taper across the length, so it looks like a straight parallel bracelet. 20 to 16 is perfection personified. That is the perfect taper. And for a 39mm head of the piece, 20 to 16 is the correct taper. 22 to 18 is the industry standard, or alternatively 20 to 16. So on a 41mm head of the piece, you could have a 22 to 18, that would be acceptable. On a 39mm, 20 to 16 is accepted as correct. 20 to 18 just is too straight. The problem with having this straight parallel bracelet with not enough taper is there's too much meat in the bracelet links at the clasp end, so it doesn't feel balanced despite the lack of heft. This is 155 grams with all the links in the bracelet, which is exceptionally long, as you can see. But it needs 20 to 16 to reduce the heft down to circa 150 and therefore better balance the piece, to balance the bracelet with the head of the piece, because at the moment it feels like a lightweight, low profile head of the piece on a heavy bracelet which doesn't taper enough. So too much heft in the bracelet, not enough heft on the head of the piece. Glycine have got the proportions wrong. Now the other thing is, this is subjective, but I dislike mirror polished centre links on a dive piece. This would look more aesthetically pleasing if it had brushed satin finish links throughout. I have seen some collectors with a Combat Sub 39 and they have brushed satin finish the centre links, and it does improve the aesthetic. It looks more like a tool watch, it looks as a dive watch should look. Mirror polished centre links are acceptable on a dress piece or a daily wear piece such as a Rolex Datejust with an oyster bracelet, or alternatively on a Rolex Yachtmaster or a Rolex GMT Master 2. Yes, polished centre links do suit those pieces, but on a dive piece, polished centre links really do not fit the aesthetic. Brushed satin finishing does look better. But on a positive note, it's easy to correct that with a Scotch-Brite pad yourself. You can delete the mirror polishing and make it brushed satin finishing easily. So they've made a mistake on the taper and also using polished centre links, but this is subjective. Some collectors might like the polished centre links in the bracelet. So comfort level is good, but the taper is incorrect and it doesn't feel balanced. On a rubber or leather strap, it would of course feel better because that would reduce the heft and reduce the weight of the bracelets. It really does feel too heavy. The bracelet feels too heavy for a 39mm head of the piece. Right, so let's do a Lume test and we'll see how the Lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged. Now, initially, the C3 Super Luminova looks good. It looks like the exciter is glowing brightly, but I can tell you there is a mismatch between the number of layers on the handset and also the applied indices. The handset is glowing brighter. It appears to be more like C1, but it's not. It's C3, so it shouldn't be glowing whiter than the dial. The green tone of C3 on the dial and handset should be the same. But there's a colour mismatch, and this will become more apparent as time goes on because the dial will begin to fade a lot quicker than the handset. So I think what we're looking at is 5 to 6 layers on the handset, but only 3 to 4 layers of C3 superluminova on the applied indices. The Lume pip matches the dial, so I think we're also looking at 3 to 4 layers on the Lume pip on the aluminium bezel insert. But now the dial is beginning to fade and fade fast, and this is not acceptable because we're not looking at a low tier piece costing €100. This is a mid-tier piece costing €565. The Lume performance, regardless of whether it's BGW9 or C3 superluminova, needs to be 10 out of 10 at this price point. We need to have 5 to 6 layers on the dial, the Lume pip and the handset. No cost-cutting measures whatsoever. And it's clear that Glycine have cut production costs because I think we're clearly looking at 3 to 4 layers. The dial is not glowing as brightly. The indices are now beginning to fade quickly. And this isn't the kind of performance one expects at this price point of €565. You really need to see €565 of superluminova. So I think this is disappointing, and I think there's room for improvement. I would like to see 5 to 6 layers applied to the dial. The handset is acceptable, but the Lume pip and also the dial is fading. The colour mismatch is not good. Now in daylight conditions, the white tone of the Lume on the handset, the Lume pip and the dial does match. There's no colour tone mismatch of the white in daylight, but in the dark you can see now the dial is fading faster than the handset. So this is a disappointment at this price point. Right, so let's discuss the movement used because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. So Glycine call the movements the Glycine caliber GL0299, but in reality what that is a Sellita SW200-1 with a Glycine branded rotor screwed onto it. So it's really a Sellita movement. It's not made by Glycine, it's simply branded as the Glycine GL0299. So the Sellita SW200-1 automatic is a clone of the ETA 2824-2. As I've detailed, the architecture of both movements is the same. The only difference is the SW200-1 has 26 joules, the ETA 2824-2 has 25 joules respectively, but other than that, the architecture is identical. So, good, reliable, well-proven workhorse Swiss caliber, no reliability issues whatsoever, and it's the correct choice at this price point. It runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 4 Hz. I like the 4 Hz sweep of the second hand. As I've detailed, it's nice and smooth. It doesn't stutter or judder as per a 3 Hz movement. 38-hour power reserve is acceptable. And the standard grade of SW200-1 is accurate to plus or minus 12 seconds per day to plus or minus 30 seconds per day, so a rather wide accuracy range. However, it can be regulated to much better than plus or minus 12 to plus or minus 30, and I'm pleased to report that Glycine are well regulating the SW200-1s they're using. This one is running consistently at plus 6, which is actually within chronometer grade. Chronometer grade accuracy is minus 4 to plus 6 per day. So plus 6 is perfectly acceptable, and I think it's good enough. It has hand winding and hacking, which are useful complications, and also a quick set date complication, which I've demonstrated works very well. So good, reliable, well-proven, robust movement, and I like the SW200-1, and it's a good choice at this price point of €565. So lastly, I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch should meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the price point. So mid-tier price point, €565. I'm going to say the quality is okay, and I'm going to say the value is poor at this price point because it's 2024 and we're seeing cost-cutting measures. The bracelet is a disappointment because the end links are a sloppy fit, it rattles. Push pins are a cost-cutting measure, should be screw pins. The clasp is the biggest disappointment on the watch. No micro adjustment, the minimum 3 holes. This is the kind of clasp that was acceptable in 2010, not in 2024. Another cost-cutting measure. You cannot have rattling bracelets with push pins and low gauge metal used on a clasp with only 3 micro adjustments at €565. It's not acceptable. So the other negative is the poor performance of the C3 superluminova, which is only 3 to 4 layers on the applied indices, which I demonstrated in the Lume test. So these are the cost-cutting measures which make me say the quality is okay. I can't say it's good, I can't say it's excellent, and also with regards to value at €565, it's poor, because there are better alternatives available at this price point, with better bracelets, with screw pins, with no rattle, heavier gauge used on the mill clasp, 5 or 6 micro adjustments, or alternatively a ratcheting mechanism, and also 10 out of 10 performance, 5 to 6 layers on BGW9 or C3 Superluminova on the dial and handset with no mismatch. These are the kind of areas that Glycine have cut corners, and their competitors in the mid-tier at €565, they have not cut corners. So they need to refine this piece. I would like to see a V2 released with the shortcomings corrected. So I'm going to recommend it to you for consideration, but bear in mind the QC issues and the cost-cutting measures. So I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Glycine Combat Sub 39 reference GL0399. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.